Welcome to Words of Light for Today, a teaching ministry that shares godly principles while giving spiritual insight and divine revelation from the Word of God for the everydayness life brings. Be richly blessed as we join Linda Adkins.
Go to Genesis. The first humans failed their test of faith. I mean, they didn't do well at all. And it was because they trusted what they saw rather than what God said. They trusted what they saw. Remember last week we said the just shall live by faith. We'll live not by sight, but by faith. Amen. So they trusted what they saw rather than believing what God had said to them. So in Genesis chapter 3, the serpent said to Eve, he said, "You won't die." That was a direct contradiction of what God had said. "And the day that you eat of this tree, you shall surely die." Okay, he said, "You won't die." The serpent replied to the woman, "God knows that your eyes will be opened as soon as you eat it, and you will be like gods," little g, gods, knowing both good and evil. King James says gods, little g. The woman was convinced. Listen. The woman was convinced. She saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. Her eyes, she was going by her eyes. So she took some of the fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. At that moment, their eyes were open. I tell you, if you swap your faith for your eyes, you're going to lose. You heard me. If you swap your faith for your eyes, you're going to lose. At that moment, their eyes were open, and they suddenly felt shame at their nakedness, so they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. Gracious me. Suddenly they lost. Suddenly they lost. Just lost. Because of their eyes. Go over to verse 24. It says, after sending them out, he made them leave the garden in that same hour. After sending them out, the Lord stationed mighty cherubims to the east of the Garden of Eden, and he placed flaming swords that slashed back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. Wow. Relationship totally broke. This is the first example of men walking by sight. First example of them choosing their eyes over faith. First thing here you see. And they broke total fellowship with God. Right. Now when we come to know the Lord and we have changed our way, and he begins to live on the inside of us and change us, it becomes an absolute temptation for us to be moved by what we see rather than what we believe and what we know. It is an absolute temptation for us to turn to see if something is being fixed or something is this way or that way. Right today, people are living by what they see rather than living by faith that the Lord has given them. And that faith that He gave us was the faith that He took and raised Jesus from the dead. That faith He gave you, if it's used, it will grow into something enormous that will carry you from now till Jesus comes or till you die and go off this planet. But I'm telling you that their faithlessness was not a aberration. Aberration means a sudden break in moral standard. But it was something that went into the heart, and now every single person born on this planet has that same faithlessness, that same break in relationship. Well, you see little innocent babies. How can they not be connected to God? Well, they're just not. They're just not. Physically, they are His creation. But spiritually, there's no connection. You have to get little children born again, no matter if they're raised in the house of preachers. You have to get children born again. Are you hearing me? It's not something that just automatically happens because you've been to church all your life. Well, I was raised up on a pew. I don't care. You still have to go to the cross. The cross has to be in your life. It has to be a reality in your life. So this is a trait. Walking by our eyes, seeing, having sight. Looking at, well, I'm telling you, I'm just facing facts. I'm facing reality. I'm just looking at what is in front of me. You see, isn't that what we say? Well, that trait is included in every human heart that was born on this planet since Adam and Eve, because they chose their eyes instead of choosing to believe what God said. It is things that you think because you know Him. That's true. I know that's true. But you see, it's things that we don't think about. So preaching and teaching helps us to bring it all together and see that's exactly what happened. Aberration means for the fact or instance of deviating from a moral standard. There was just no, quick little deviation. This was something that took place from that point on and occurred every time there was a reproduction in this earth. I'm telling you, you were plagued with walking by your eyes instead of believing what God says. There's some children that are raised to believe there's no such thing as a God. And the rest of us idiots that believe there is one are just weak fools. Well, if that's the case, leave me alone. Don't try to change me in that. But I'm telling you right now, this thing has been, listen to me, has been a corruption for mankind ever since this day. It is the thing that stops us. The consequences of this thing, the consequences of this sin right here in chapter 3 of Genesis is the results of faithlessness in every single one of us. Now, listen to me, we have no ability to believe God on our own. The first thing that they laid eyes on after they were created was God. Are you hearing me? The first thing when Adam, he was sitting up probably next to a tree. When he opened his eyes, he saw God. He was looking right in the face of God and His Creator. And it still didn't keep him from sinning. Because he used his choice. He was sitting right there, listening to the conversation between her and that snake. And he used his choice. Have you ever just let anybody put anything in your mouth? If somebody says to me, here, taste this, I want you to hand it to me and I will put it in my mouth. But she just gave it right to him, and he just opened it up, and here we go. Eyesight. And ever since that time, we have been plagued with, if I can't see it, I'm not believing it. And you see, the thing of it is, our faithlessness comes from that scene right there. But he so loved his creation. He so loved his creation that after Jesus, he was willing to put in every man, he said, I'll change their heart. Their heart became what it was after this scene right here. After these few moments right here, our heart became what it was. Everyone born on this planet has that same kind of heart. You won't listen. You're stubborn. You're rebellious. You're not going to let anybody tell you what to do. And some are so dyed in that, so steeped in that. That's why most people won't go to church, because they don't want nobody telling them what to do. As if this is telling you what to do. You can do this or not do this. It's up to you. This is something that God has called me to do, and I'm going to do it till He tells me, okay, now you can sit down. But until He does, I'm going to still stand up here, doing what I'm doing, what I'm anointed to do, called to do. But some people, they can't come to church because you might say something that I'll have to do, and I'm not letting anybody tell me anything. Well, we know it. We saw when that happened. We saw exactly when that happened. Stubbornness, rebelliousness. Looking at what you could see rather than what He said. But He so loved that He was willing to give us a new heart and give us the measure of faith that it would take us to live the rest of our life in faith on this planet. And thereby not break relationship with Him. You can't have relationship with God and not have any faith. That's what gets you put out. You get put out when you become faithlessness. You get escorted out. And I don't care how many people are agreeing with you, agree with me that this will happen. Well, I don't mind agreeing if I know you're using your faith, but I'm not doing the job for you. Okay, what have you said to him? How have you talked to him? Well, I haven't exactly said anything yet. I just wanted to get you to... No. We're not doing that. You start praying. Let me know what you're saying. Let me know how you're going to God. Then I will get in agreement with you. But I'm not wasting my faith on something like that when you just want me to do the job for you. But He so loved, He so cared until He gave them, He's give all of us, after you're born again, gives all of us that measure of faith. You've got enough in that first measure. That measure raised Jesus from the dead. If you just knew how powerful that measure was, you wouldn't stop using it, because every time you use that measure, it gets stronger. Well, what's greater than raising somebody from the dead? Well, moving mountains. Having control over yourself. It takes a lot of faith to control you. It takes a lot of faith to make you be still and shut up and be quiet. It takes a lot of faith to keep you from looking at what you can see. It takes a lot of faith in that to keep saying to you, don't go there, stay here, look up, focus on Him, stay with Him, because if you break your focus, you're going to fall. My goodness. So if you use that measure, that's already powerful, it folds itself over again. See, it begins to multiply. There's things that multiply. What is that? Faith and grace. Grace multiplies. Faith and grace. Understanding multiplies. You don't just get it added. Now you have to add to your faith, but once you begin to add to your faith, and once you begin to use your faith multiplies. Are you with me? Here's what happened. Their trust was broken. It was just broken. When he opened his eyes from being created, first thing he saw was God. He was just like a creative surgeon building that man. And when you cut a man open, it is a marvel how all of that is put together. It is a wonder how your liver fits right up underneath your gallbladder and all that stuff. And you see, you can't blow that up too big in there because there's not enough room. He made it all fit together in a slim, trim body. It's wonderful. The Scripture says we were fearfully and wonderfully made. And so when he got finished and he looked at it and he told them others standing around, this is very good. And then he took the man and he blowed himself into the man. He released himself. Breath came from him into Adam. And when he opened his eyes, God was what he saw. After them, nobody else has ever seen God. He always hides himself in different ways. He'll put his hand over your eyes so you can just see as he passes by. Or he hides himself in a cloud. Are you hearing me? But he saw God, and he gave him the responsibility to tell her what was the rules. The rules were simple. Just do anything you want to. You have access to all of this. Do anything you want to. Just don't eat that. One little thing. One little thing. But once your eyes settle on it, you can't help but touch it. It's that concupiscence in us. Tell a kid, don't touch that, it's hot. They don't believe you. They have to see. They have to see. You can't tell a kid, don't step in that water. Because if you don't believe that they're already attracted to that water, turn your back. Just turn your back. And they're not going to step in it, they're going to jump in it. And this is what happened. Their lack of faith in believing what he said brought a barrier between them and God. And people today, that barrier is still there, and they don't see any need in you going to church. What do you go to church all the time for? You just went this morning, you're going back tonight? What's the matter with you? You're just wasting gas. Not here, you're not. You're not wasting gas here. But it brought that barrier. And that barrier still remains. You can't cross that barrier or break down that barrier without coming to the cross. Oh my God. It broke their trust. It broke their fellowship. It created faithlessness. It started all of this in this verse right here. Went all the way to today. And it's still alive today. And you know what? The poison of men's eyesight is more dangerous now than it actually was then. But it didn't take them but, a couple of 100 years to really get so vile and so filthy until God couldn't take anymore. Are you hearing me? Why? Because they were living by their eyes. When you read from these chapters on and you go forward, I'm telling you what's the truth. It got worse and worse and worse. It was so vile and so awful. You see, even though Satan believes that God is, it's a dead faith. Even though he believes that God exists, he knows God exists, but it's a knowing that's without any power. It's a faith of his existence without any power. It's as dead faith as it can be. But I'm telling you right now, when we come to a place, when we choose our sight rather than choosing what he said to us, you find yourself with barriers there. You can't get past that, and you don't know why. I feel like I've just lost God. Well, you didn't lose him. You lost your faith. He never gets lost. He's always the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's always that. But you lose your faith. You see, when you choose what you see, when you choose what they did, when you choose like they choose, you're doing the same thing they did. But we can't help but do that when we have the same kind of life that they had. The same kind of genes, the same kind of spiritual DNA, the same heart program that they programmed in themselves that day. Being like gods didn't help them. Oh, my Lord. You see, every time we go against God, let's go over to, let me show you something here. Let's go over to Genesis 26. We see in this 26th chapter of Genesis where Isaac was about to do the exact same thing that his father was. And it says this in verse 1, a severe famine now struck the land as had happened before in Abraham's time. So Isaac moved to Ger, where Abimelech, king of the Philistines, lived. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, do not go down to Egypt, but do as I tell you, live here as a foreigner in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. And you say, wow, if God was to say that to me, I just don't know what I'd do. I'd do exactly like he said. No, you'd have to make a choice to do that. Because Isaac had to make a choice. God never told Abraham to go to Egypt. He just went. You know why? Because there was the famine, and there was nothing growing, and there was nothing going on, and we couldn't get water, and we can't grow food, so we need to go down to Egypt where they don't have a famine. So you start looking by your eyes. And then once you get your eyesight going, then you add up all the facts. And so then you use that for your truth. But the truth was God would have caused Abraham to prosper right where he was. So he got a hold of Isaac before Isaac could pack up. Because once people start packing, they don't like to unpack. So God got him, he just had the thought, well, I'm going to go do this. So he got a hold of him. He said, do not go down to Egypt, but do as I tell you. Live here, and I will bless you. I hereby confirm that I will give you all these lands. All these lands I will give you and your descendants, just as I solemnly promised Abraham your father. I will cause your descendants to become as numerous as the stars of the sky, and I will give them all these lands, and through your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed. I will do this because Abraham listened to me and obeyed all my requirements. Well, God don't have requirements now. He has got as many requirements now as he ever had. There is requirements to faith. There are requirements to getting the grace of God. Listen to me, he said. Listen to me and do what I say. Fulfill my requirements. I'm going to do that. When it's all said and done, I can't care what you do. I want you to, because there's blessing in this. There's reality in this. There's nobody can take it away from you in this. There's nobody can tell you no in this. Everything we need is in this, by listening and doing what we are required to do.
You have been watching Words of Light for Today with Linda Adkins. For prayer or a free CD of today's message, please call 904-289-9727. Visit our website at wordsoflight.org, where you may order explosive and anointed teaching messages or other great resources from our bookstore. Be blessed and join Linda Adkins next time as she brings Words of Light for Today.